Oh, you started it.
I started it.
You always never tell me when I do something
That's
stupid.
live. Let's get this thing going. Oh, they're all live. Wonderful. YouTube. Do-do-do. One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Let me know how you feel. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Speak, speak.
Shout out to the people.
1, 2, 1, 2. Why is it doing that?
The people of the world.
All right. We also want to send out a text message to let you know what's going on here.
Oh, look, it's the real Chris Garrett and not the imposter. Did you hear about that, Jordan?
There's an imposter, Chris Garrett?
So there's a Chris Garrett that was posting the other day in the chat saying he was going to join as a member. And so I was like, okay, I guess Chris is like pretending he's not a member to entice other people to join. Okay, cool, I guess. But then this Chris Garrett was posted the other day. He's like, weird. There was another Chris Garrett the other day.
Wow.
So.
The mic volume is a bit low, but Jen sounds great. Let me see if I could lift that mic volume. 1, 2, 6 decibels.
Tony, we're pretty much the same exact distance to the mic.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. How's that? Is that any better? Speak, speak.
Testing.
Speak.
Testing.
I think that's a little better.
I just drove quite a ways.
Drove quite a ways to my new humble abode. Let me know if you guys if that's a little better. I just raised the decibel. Right side is quieter. What are you gonna do? 1 second. Yeah, it's at 6 decibels, so that should be good. Let me send a text message while Jen tells you about her drive up here.
Yeah, it wasn't so bad. I listened actually to Chapo Trap House on the drive, and the latest one that they had, or at least the one I chose, was they were rating the fail sons, as they called it, the fail sons and daughters of prominent politicians. So this included like Hunter Biden, Chelsea Clinton, Joe Kennedy III, Meghan McCain. Who else? Like the Huckabee twins, which I didn't even know existed.
He has twins?
Yeah, like twin boys. Apparently one murdered a dog or something. I didn't know they existed. And then some others who are not notable at all. So it was actually kind of an interesting discussion. In the end, they voted Chelsea Clinton as the biggest fail of all of these people. So not like, I don't feel like I've learned anything from this discussion, but it did help pass the time on the drive.
That's good.
And then pulling into Jordan and Anat's area, I made some incorrect turns. People got mad. People honked. But what are you going to do? And here we are.
Wow. Unbelievable. What is this, push campaign? What are they talking about? So we're going to have quite a lot to do today. We have an interview. Well, I interviewed the great Chris Hedges. So we're going to play that. And you may not have enough credits to run this push. What does push mean?
Like you push, a push is like a campaign, like you push it out to people.
Oh, hold on. We have to, you're getting all the behind the scenes. We have to
I swear I bought
apply more credits for this scam, which is growing your text list. They charge you an arm and a leg.
WTF, I just bought more.
2005.
Oh, Jesus.
Is that too much?
Whoa, you're going for broke here.
How much should I put?
I always buy it, but you may as well. I mean, we're going to be out and about, so. Whoa,
no,
Jesus.
I don't want 4,400. Who's got 400 of the GoFundMe? Because I just spent $400 to send you a text message when we're live. This is what we have to do because of YouTube, i.e. FuTube, shall I say. We have to continually buy credits just to send a text message to let you know when we're live, because YouTube chooses not to. But I digress. We have a great interview with Chris Hayes. We talk about
Chris Hedges.
Chris Hedges. Very different than Chris Hayes.
I have some beef with Chris Hayes.
So we're going to play that. We'll get into the election a little bit, talk about our plans, because we kind of have loose plans for the election, but we kind of have to solidify them. So maybe the audience could help solidify. Okay, the text message is out, so you should get it soon.
And if you do not currently get our text messages, text COUP to 370-370.
All right, the text message just went out. And we're also, I think, I covered it at length, but I'm sure we'll talk about Glenn Greenwald, censorship in general, what this means for independent media, because I think it's not just about the Intercept and Glenn Greenwald. I think what Glenn's revelations really indicate is the selective, not only censorship, but the selective vetting that the media does for stories it wants to push versus stories it does not want to touch. So we'll get into that. Let me just say, Jen is here. I'm here. We're wearing our Status Coup.
Yes.
If you can't see, buy it on the store. Listen, this is a big GoFundMe day. We need your support. We're heading to Pennsylvania for the election. John is going to be with us, so obviously we got to pay him. As we're going to report to you today, Pennsylvania is not looking like it will be decided on the election day. So we might be there for more than the election day. So definitely, if you can, pitch in. We don't really know how this election is going to go. It could be on election night, or it could be go way past the election. So we really don't know. But please, if you can, contribute. I'm also very happy to report that yesterday we had a big membership day too. We got about 10 new signups, which is big for us in recent months. So we're about to crack 1,700 again. Hey, as far as I know, we're going to be one of the few outlets actually leaving studios, going out in the trenches on election night to show you the fuckery from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, because I think there's going to be fuckery all around, to be honest with you. There's going to be court challenges galore. Ballots are going to be tossed. And of course, the growing threat of white supremacy. We know there's a lot of dangerous chatter out there of, frankly, white supremacists. Jen and I obviously have to be careful. We're journalists, but we also don't want to get killed. So we're going to be monitoring things on the ground there. But the thing that really will boost us is the more people that sign up to support this journalism, even at $5 a month, which is our lowest membership level, really makes a big difference. So hopefully we can get some signups today. Anything I'm missing before we air the Chris Hedges interview?
I would just say, if you are still on the fence about becoming a member, I think now is the time. I don't think we've mentioned our Discord. So
yes,
we have a Discord hopping right now. People are in there all the time talking politics, talking news, talking recipes. We have a book club.
Wowzers.
We have people talking music, sharing pictures with one another. Behind the scenes stuff, it's really, really exciting. If you don't know what a Discord is, it's basically like a mixture between a forum and a chat room, with various channels to chat in. So that's really, really fun. And also, with us going back out in the field, we need your help. So those $5 a month memberships really, really pile up. So statuscoup.com/join. We definitely need your memberships to heading into this election day.
And I'll just say, Jen's going to be horrified that I mentioned this, but the Discord is so cool that I believe somebody created a sub-channel just for my health problems.
I created it.
You created it.
Yeah.
So what's it called?
Status Poo.
Status Poo, to discuss my mobility issues in my colon. So looking for ideas, suggestions. I'll give you an update after the show in Status Poo. For those of you who
right after the show
don't know what I'm talking about.
Get excited.
Yeah, so definitely join just for that, statuscoup.com/join.
So I've had this thing where Jordan is TMI all the time about most subjects, but in particular about his poop and lack thereof. So I tried my darndest, like, Jordan, just stop talking about your poop. Like, no one cares. But it turns out, like, people did care. People started emailing us.
Hey, the gut is the epicenter of your health. And when the gut is messed up, your whole body is messed up.
True, true. So I lost the battle, and clearly Jordan needs an outlet in order to talk more about his poo. So here we are, Status Poo Channel, Discord. I think it's worth becoming a member just for this.
And indigestion. Let's not forget the indigestion that comes with it. Anyway, I digress. Also, GoFundMe is welcome. Super Chat is welcome. So, Allison, Jordan, are you still voting for Biden? Are you already putting me on the spot? Yes, I voted for Biden.
I also have already voted for Biden.
It's completely true. It's wonderful. If you feel free, you can call me a sellout, whatever. It's fine. You vote for whoever you want. It was a decision I made for myself, and I haven't skipped a beat. I think you could personally come to the decision to vote for someone while also covering them accurately and critically, which I've done. I don't think my coverage has changed at all over the last few weeks. Frankly, I think I've gotten even more critical of Biden. So yeah, I decided to. I think personally that there is fascism in America long before Donald Trump. But I think that on the levels of leadership, to me, I always thought Donald Trump was a sociopath. The last few weeks, I think it's really elevated to psychopath. And I think for me, we cover the Democratic Party critically, probably more so than the Republican Party. But to me, this isn't really about the Democrats for the Republicans. It's not particularly about neoliberalism versus batshit Tea Party. They're all terrible philosophies. To me, this is specifically about Donald Trump. And I think when you have someone with it literally going around willingly, he's not a stupid person, basically risking people's lives for his own narcissism and delusions of grandeur. It's not just because he wants to win. He is a psychopath, and he desperately needs the adoration of these crowds. The fact that literally, while with a highly contagious illness, which, by the way, if he didn't have the cocktail of medications that they gave him, he's 74 and overweight, he might have died. That he literally took a joyride around Walter Reed, endangering his Secret Service agents. That he literally goes into the White House without a mask while he has coronavirus. That, frankly, I mean, with Trump, scandals go very quickly. I think it's very likely that he tested positive for coronavirus before the debate. He wouldn't get tested before that debate with Joe Biden and went on stage anyway. This is somebody that I think is unhinged. I think 4 more years, in my view, it's not about lesser of two evils. It's about who strategically do I want to fight? Who do I think I have a better chance fighting? Is it Joe Biden and Neera Tanden, or is it Donald Trump and QAnon? Is it Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, or is it Donald Trump and the Proud Boys? Is it Joe Biden and, the Chamber of Commerce and Lloyd Blankfein, or is it Donald Trump and, the growing militias that are talking about going to polling places with guns? So that's, to me, why I decided to vote for Biden. But I say vote for whoever you want. I don't really think it's productive to, tell people how to vote, to shame people. It's your choice. And me voting for Biden is literally, it's not just like holding my nose. I know he's a warmonger. I know he's corrupt. But I also, frankly, I disagree with the perspective of some people, like Jimmy, for example, who I happen to like a lot. But I think it's kind of delusional that, if you withhold your vote from the Democratic Party, then they know they have to actually, have to move towards you if they know they don't definitely have your vote. The Democratic Party, it doesn't matter if they lose election after election after election to Trump or someone worse. They're not changing unless they're forced to change. They are not going, they just lost to Trump in 2016. They went further right as a response. So this whole idea of withhold your vote from the Democratic Party and they'll finally cave to your will, I think that's very naive. And I don't think there's any evidence that they will. Frankly, I think if they lose to Trump again, and we all withheld our votes from Biden, and that's the reason he lost, I think they'd just triple down on Russiagate, maybe add in the post office, and rig it again. The only way you're changing the Democratic Party is and I'm sure Jen and I will talk about this in a bit, the only way you're changing not just the Democratic Party, but politics, period, is an economic boycott. That's the only way. I am convinced. I cover protests. Jen cover protests. We could all circle around blocks till we're blue in the face. I don't mean to be the white guy telling Black Lives Matter what to do. I think they're great. I'll follow, we'll be there to cover it. But I think the oligarchy will wait you out. They'll let you march. They'll let you protest. Notice Biden keeps saying, yeah, protest is great if it's peaceful, but then he gets into the looting. Well, they don't have an answer if you start boycotting Amazon. They don't have an answer if you do an organized strike. That's why labor unions were so powerful in the 1950s, 60s, to a certain extent the 1970s, because they were large in numbers and they had leverage. We don't have that anymore, and we need to redevelop that. So with that said, really excited. I've been trying to get Chris Hedges for a long time. We speak a lot about Biden. He did not hold back. We talk about coronavirus. We talk about, frankly, this is not going to be a pick-me-up interview. If you're looking for hope, this is not it. We talk about, frankly, the looming economic apocalypse. We did talk about Afghanistan. I mean, this is somebody who's reported in Africa, the Balkans, the Middle East, I think Sarajevo. So we talk about Afghanistan and the permanent occupation there. We're going on 20 years. So really, really enjoyed speaking with him. So we're going to play that interview. Please, please, please. Super chats, GoFundMe, membership. And then Jen and I will be back after to give our thoughts and cover other last minute election things. Here we go. Chris Hedges. Hey, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Chris Hedges, who has reported all over the world, spent nearly 2 decades as a foreign correspondent, Central America, the Middle East, Africa, and the Balkans, and has written way too many books for me to list, but the latest, America, the Farewell Tour. I wanted to start just with kind of a contrast. An alarming headline a couple of weeks ago I read was that Elon Musk was creating a rocket that could deliver weapons in 1 hour anywhere around the world. Contrasted with, we're now on 96 days since the federal unemployment of $600 extra that was keeping desperate unemployed people afloat has expired. So over 3 months since people have gotten any federal help during this pandemic. As somebody who's talked so much about the decline of the empire, what does that say to you that there's the manufacturing of weapons delivery systems in an hour as a priority, but federal help for the desperately unemployed has been non-existent for months?
Well, that is the classic divide in an oligarchic society where all of your resources go towards consolidating the power and wealth of an oligarchic elite and their pet projects, which include, of course, the prosecution of imperial war. The whole raison d'etre for an empire is about exploiting cheap labor and plundering natural resources, which, of course, benefits not us and not the young men and women who go to places like Iraq and Afghanistan and suffer and die there, but the oligarchic elite. So I think it's just one more grotesque example of the massive economic divide, but also the kind of priorities that are embraced by the elites that have nothing to do with what are now, and the vital priorities of most of the nation, which is not only suffering from this pandemic, but the economic fallout. The evictions are going to skyrocket very soon. The boosting of the unemployment checks have run out. The stimulus checks have all gone to the landlords and the credit card companies. Another 8 million Americans have been thrust into poverty. And the unemployment and chronic underemployment has not only not been addressed, but will be exacerbated as the country is unable to contain the virus.
And you've spoken a lot about the fact that presidential elections really aren't about anything of substance, but they're about personalities. It's interesting to me that Biden's main campaign can be boiled down to character is on the ballot,
right,
and a return to, corruption behind closed doors, basically. What are your thoughts? Because it's something he said during the last debate, which I didn't hear many people pick up. He said, healthcare is you have a human right to affordable healthcare. Right. You have a human right to affordable healthcare. To me, obviously, we're not breaking news on Trump and the threat that Donald Trump poses, but are people being kind of gaslit that Joe Biden himself is not a threat?
Completely. I mean, look at Biden's record. I remember when Obama announced that he was running for president, Dennis Kucinich printed out and gave me Obama's 2-year voting record in the Senate, which was one corporate giveaway after another, which was a message to where the real centers of power in America lie. And Kucinich used this analogy. He said, when I was a kid, I used to go to baseball games in Cleveland, and ushers would go up and down and sell what they call the scorecard. He'd say, get the scorecard, get the scorecard. He said, here's the scorecard. Here's the only thing that matters. Why are the elites pumping so much money? I mean, this super PAC, which is largely funded by Wall Street and Silicon Valley, has pumped staggering amounts of money into the Biden campaign because they know that Biden has, throughout his entire political career, served the interests of the elites. And you're right. I mean, remember, we got sold that garbage when George W. Bush ran, that he was a nice guy and the kind of guy you would want to have a beer with. And these are just manufactured personalities. I mean, Biden himself, by the way, and I know people who know him, is phenomenally arrogant and full of himself and an intellectual lightweight and has no moral core. But you go back and look at the appalling record, which, of course, is not being discussed by the Democratic Party. This is the person who took down Anita Hill. I mean, they never talk about Biden supporting Supreme Court justices because, first of all, Biden was picked by Obama because basically he was a Republican. He voted as a Republican. But this was the great champion of Clarence Thomas and Anton Scalia, two of the worst modern Supreme Court justices that have sat on the bench. So he rips apart Anita Hill, this courageous woman who takes on her abuser. He is one of the principal architects of the invasion of Iraq. He is a stalwart supporter of the apartheid state in Israel. He, along with the Democratic Party hierarchy, has engineered and supports the wholesale surveillance of the public by government intelligence agencies. He was behind, along with Clinton, the destruction of welfare. And under our old welfare system, 70% of the original recipients were children. He has called repeatedly for cuts to Social Security. He was one of the architects of NAFTA, the greatest betrayal of the working class in this country since the 1947 Taft-Hartley Act. He has been behind all the free trade deals, deindustrialization, the real decline in wages, which have resulted, of course, in the loss of hundreds of thousands of good-paying manufacturing jobs, and then the lifting of tariffs so that workers in sweatshops in Mexico and China and Vietnam can produce products that are shipped back and then sold to us. He's been an enemy, and the Obama administration with Arne Duncan was a huge proponent of charter schools. It's not just Betsy DeVos. He is behind the 1994 Omnibus Crime Bill, which doubled our prison population, tripled and quadrupled sentences. Huge, which he used to brag about, by the way, huge expansion of crimes that merit the death penalty. And then, of course, the whole militarization of police. He has said he won't support the Green New Deal. He doesn't support immigration reform. He supports fracking. He's never been good in his voting record on women's right to abortion, reproductive rights. He's a segregationist, longtime opponent of busing, and had close relationships with the worst segregationists in the Congress. Student debt, and then, of course, as you mentioned, the whole for-profit, and also deregulating the banking industry with Glass-Steagall, but then the whole for-profit health system, which is the reason our pandemic is we can't control, because we don't have a health system that's built to control. It's built to make money. It doesn't stockpile vaccines or protective gear or ventilators or anything else because you don't make money in it. What they've done is strip communities of hospitals, drastically reduced the numbers of hospital beds, ratcheted up the cost of healthcare. This is all Biden.
And, Noam Chomsky, who has been very, very strong that there's no discussion here, you should vote for Biden. And he phrases it as the traditional leftist, apparatus has been election day is kind of a temporary thing. You just go pull push a button. But the real work is not in electoral politics, but activism and pushing people like Biden left. And you've heard this from progressive groups: fight against Trump, get rid of Trump, and then let's fight like hell to move Biden. From what I've seen, Biden has told you he's not going to move throughout this campaign. Is that realistic that Biden could be moved through progressive action, the mass mobilization we've seen from young people in the case of Black Lives Matter, but maybe there's chances for other mobilizations? Do you see that as kind of a false hope?
Yeah. Biden, they used to call him Senator Credit Card because he was the senator from Delaware, and throughout his career did the bidding of MBNA, which is the largest independent credit card company in the country, which, by the way, also employed his son, Hunter. No, we know what Biden's record is. All this PR stuff and Uncle Joe and empathy, and we're just being completely gaslit. Look, the problem with the left is that every 4 years it proves it stands for nothing. Either you stand with it. We should have walked out on the Democratic Party with NAFTA, and we didn't. And that has shredded the credibility of the left because we surrender to the Democratic Party, which in Europe, the Democratic Party would be considered a far-right party. And that's the problem. Nobody wants to step out. Nobody wants to confront the corporate duopoly. And let's be clear, on all of the major issues, there's no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. What they fight over are ethical or societal issues, which are not unimportant: GBLTQ rights and a woman's right to control her own body, and all of that stuff is important, but those aren't really political issues. On the major political issues, whether it's war, free trade, austerity, wholesale surveillance, there's no daylight between them. And now we have no time left, given the ecocide that is looming and the potential for billions of lives to not only be disrupted, but ultimately lost. And I think that if you look at the climate crisis, it's an example of how all of the ruling elites have failed us. Because there's an example over the past 3 decades of people protesting and lobbying and sending petitions and appealing to the UN and funding Greenpeace, and this misguided trust in liberal politicians like Obama or Biden. And what's happened? There's been, over that time period, a 60% rise in global carbon emissions since 1990. And now we have baked into the system, according to most estimates, another 40% rise in the next decade. So that means we're less than a decade away from carbon levels that are estimated to be 450 parts per million. That's equivalent to a 2 degrees Celsius temperature. That's a catastrophe. And I think that figure alone shows that the elites are not beholden to the common good, not beholden to the citizenry, but to this essentially global corporate behemoths that don't pay taxes and are not accountable. I just did an event the other night for Stephen Donziger, who won the $9.5 billion settlement against Chevron. Chevron packed up, left Ecuador. These were in the Amazon basin, and is now persecuting Donziger. Actually managed to get him placed under house arrest and disbarred. And that's where real power lies. And if we don't confront and essentially wrest power back, we're finished, just in terms of the climate. Why was Biden selected? And he was selected because the corporate oligarchs who prefer Biden over Trump's an embarrassment to the empire and inept and impulsive and all the other things we know. And Biden will restore that kind of decorum. But all of the major Democratic donors, including Lloyd Blankfein, the former CEO of Goldman Sachs, and everyone else, made it clear that if Bernie Sanders was the nominee, they would vote for Trump. So this whole thing of the least worst mantra only applies to us, doesn't apply to them. They don't like Trump, but they can live with him.
Right.
Biden is their handpicked. I mean, he has.
Well, they basically rigged it at the end of the primary. They all lined up, ducks in a row.
They did rig it. And there are all sorts of other dirty tricks they use. They turned the DNC, which they did in 2016 as well, into an arm of, and it was the Clinton campaign. Now it's the Biden campaign. They effectively blocked independents from voting in many primaries, and a lot of young Bernie supporters are not registered Democrats. So, they sabotaged Sanders' campaign in 2016, and they sabotaged it again in 2020. And let's be clear: without that massive amounts of corporate money, figures like Biden or Hillary Clinton or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer wouldn't hold power. I mean, the power of a Schumer or a Biden or a Pelosi is that they funnel that money to the anointed candidates. They funnel that big money. And you take that big money out of politics, they wouldn't have a job. And they know it. So, I mean, the system is not – the Democratic Party doesn't function as a normal political party. The base has no say in the party platform or even the party hierarchy. I mean, you can't sit on the DNC unless you're a superdelegate. Superdelegates are appointed, and they're all lobbyists or ex-politicians or whatever. It's completely rigged. And I think part of the naivete of Sanders was that he thought he could work within that system. And unfortunately, as Samuel Johnson once said of remarriage after divorce is the triumph of hope over experience.
Right. You've written and spoken a lot about fascism creeping in America. And what's interesting to me is, all of these kind of suburban neoliberal, they call them wine moms, it seemed to believe that it all erupted because, as soon as Trump came in. But I remember reporting in Standing Rock, seeing, police paid for by public taxpayers, right, working with an oil company to, commit violence towards Native Americans, environmental activists. We could go through so many examples. I look at Portland. All of these folks were outrightly outraged when federal troops were sent in there by Trump. But when the federal troops leave and the regular police do the same exact things to the protesters under Democratic mayors, they're silent. Do you feel that if Biden becomes president, these same folks outraged at the authoritarian fascist tendencies of Trump will be silent on those tendencies under neoliberal leaders?
Yeah, because the real base of the Democratic Party leadership is essentially divided between the two coasts. These are the professional class, the technocrats who have done very well, while most of the country has not. That gets into the whole issue of racism and that kind of liberal patina of equality and justice, of course, is not at all matched. I mean, that's why you will get liberals consistently voting for quote unquote law and order figures. And that's how Biden really built his political career and he was quite open about it, seizing back the quote unquote law and order issue from the Republicans. I mean, they kind of out-Republican the Republicans. That's what Clinton and Biden, they were the two architects of it, did. So, Biden's already called for more money for police. I mean, his solution to shooting unarmed black people in the head is to shoot them in the leg. I mean, no, he has had decades-long relationship with police unions, many of which, such as in Philadelphia, are just basically white hate groups. So you will see inevitably further unrest because of the social dislocation that we know is coming. I mean, you have 48%, almost 50% of frontline workers who are ineligible for sick pay. You have 43 million Americans who've lost their employee-sponsored health insurance. We have, there are different figures, thousands of bankruptcies a day, and a lot of them are tied to medical bills, even for people who have insurance. We've seen these food bank lines with tens of thousands of desperate families. We saw 10 to 14 million renter households. That's about 34 million people were behind on their rent in September. That's $12 to $17 billion in unpaid rent. That's a figure that is expected to rise to $34 billion in past due rent in January. And now the response has been the lifting on moratorium and foreclosures. That means millions of families destitute, tossed out in the street. Hunger has exponentially risen, tripled actually between now and last year. This is according to the Census Bureau and the Department of Agriculture. The proportion of American children who don't have enough to eat, the same study, is 14 times higher than it was last year. And all this while the 50 richest Americans have as much wealth as half of the country. Millennials have been hit the hardest. I think that's why you see so many millennials out on the streets. That's estimated about 70 million people, and they have 4.6% of the U.S. wealth. So
it's a good segue to my last question. In your book, you wrote about, you really set the scene really, really well about a Scranton lace factory and the decay of towns like Scranton, which ironically Biden's from Scranton. I've seen this in the Midwest when I've reported some of these cities, towns look like ghost towns. Yeah. So there was a pandemic before the coronavirus. Yeah. We've been pretty grim and Debbie Downer. Do you feel when you're looking at these protests out here, considering that the pain is going to get much worse, like you just outlined, there is the possibility, I don't know if it would be some type of general strike, but actually organizing for economic protests, because people could march around till they're blue in the face. Yeah. But unless you hit the real rule, I call it the United Corporations of America, unless you actually hit them in the wallet, real change isn't going to come. Do you see that potentially coming in any manner?
We have to almost start from scratch because our unions have been broken. And as much as I admire the people who have taken to the streets to protest these wanton police murders, and I do admire them immensely, especially since the fact that they're not being gaslighted by Nancy Pelosi's Kente Scar for police taking the knee, or Muriel Brower, the mayor of Washington, painting 35-foot tall letters which read Black Lives Matter near the White House at the same time she calls for a $50 million increase in the police budget and the building of a $500 million new jail. I don't think they're buying the gaslighting, but and this goes all the way back, over a century, to the vicious assaults in the name of anti-communism against the left, which wiped out not just the communists, but the old CIO and, of course, the Wobblies and all these people who had that kind of radical economic analysis, which, as you correctly point out, is key. We're not there yet. And what I worry about and have written about is the power of this Christianized fascism, which is represented by Pence and William Barr and Pompeo and DeVos and Ben Carson. They have built the institutions, including the media platforms. They control now 20% of the federal judiciary, thanks to appointments by the Republicans in the Trump administration. We just saw this fanatic Barrett comes out of this extreme sect sent to the Supreme Court. We have 6 out of 9 Supreme Court justices who are, in essence, come out of the Federalist Society. So these are extreme ideologues. And what I worry about is that as the society proves unable to cope with the pandemic and the economic consequences of the pandemic, and then let's say that the polls are right, although I'm not convinced that somehow Biden wins, you will get this segment of the population, which does support Trump, believing that the election was stolen. And then you'll see a ratcheting up of violence wedded to the Christian right. The Christian right has very close ties to these militias. Some of these militia members in Michigan that tried to kidnap the governor were getting funding from organizations tied to the DeVos family. Betsy DeVos's brother, Eric Prince, founded Blackwater. And then within the military, especially within combat units, which are mostly white and poor. So I'm extremely worried about the potential unraveling that could come very quickly and could express itself in acts of extreme violence. I find many echoes of Yugoslavia, a war that I covered for the New York Times.
And sorry, one more quick question. It didn't come up during any of the debates that I know of, We're about to turn the corner 20 years in Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I simply ask, is this a permanent occupation at this point? Are we never leaving?
No, we will have to leave because we've already lost the war in Afghanistan, and unless you consider the ascendancy of Iran to the control of Iraq a victory, we've lost the war in Iraq. We've created all these failed states in Libya and Syria and everywhere else. What this is, this kind of military adventurism, is a kind of characteristic of late empire. All late empires do it. The Athenian Empire did it when they invaded Sicily and most of their fleet was sunk and their soldiers. And then the empire begins to break apart. So what you have at the end of empire, historians call it micro-militarism. It's an attempt to restore a lost hegemony, a lost power through disastrous military adventures. And that's what's happened. And we've squandered not only tremendous amounts of resources, disrupted or taken the lives of millions of people, but we've turned ourselves into an international pariah. So this is, again, part of the disintegration, the typical disintegration of any empire, including ours. Remember, we spend over half of all discretionary spending on these, futile and endless wars. And all of the architects of the war, including Biden, should be put on trial for this. Wars of aggression are considered war crimes. Preemptive war is a war crime, which comes out of World War II. So, I think that you have a series of stresses: the pandemic, the economic fallout from the pandemic, the wasting of vital resources in the time of a climate emergency on war and not responding to that climate emergency, the militarization of a police to essentially, it's basically the police and the prison system. We run the largest prison system in the world, 25% of the world's prisoners, while we're 4% of the world's population. It's prisons and militarized police that are the primary forms of social control. And as social unrest spreads outside of what Malcolm X called these internal colonies, you will see harsher and harsher mechanisms, which have already been visited on primarily poor people of color, but you both have the legal and the physical infrastructure to essentially turn the entire country into a very naked police state. I think that's where we're headed, with the kind of veneer of a Christianized fascism to give it a kind of ideological cover. And I think the real result of the Biden, if he's elected, will be that we see the rise of competent fascists.
Well, that's a good pick-me-up heading into the weekend. Thank you, Chris Hedges. If people are looking for a good read while stuck at home during the pandemic, America the Farewell Tour. I'm almost done with it. It's really, really great. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Jordan. Thanks for that.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.
So, if you are somebody with insane Trump derangement syndrome, you probably didn't like that interview. I didn't bother asking him much about Trump because honestly, what was I going to get from Chris Hedges on Donald Trump that nobody doesn't know? But one thing that really struck me, and I said it to you while this was playing, and keep pressing the like button, by the way. Thanks for the super chats. GoFundMe, please, please, please. Damn, I wish Bernie talked the way he talked during the Democratic primary. I have not heard Bernie, any candidate, or Donald Trump outline Biden's record as accurately and damning as Hedges did there. That was just an encyclopedia of his record, and it's all true. I didn't know, by the way, the thing about Obama's record that he outlined. But, it goes to show you, I don't want to woulda, coulda, shoulda 4 days before the election, but you really have to think if Bernie would have not just gone for the jugular, but really pointed out his full record. Instead of only focusing on, Bernie truly had that wonderful, optimistic view that if I just run on a positive campaign on the issues, I'll win. No, you also have to discredit your opponent. I mean, and I also understand why Trump hasn't, in 2 debates, hasn't gone through Biden's full record. He's taken the strategy of, trying to make him seem like a socialist and Hunter Biden, which just wasn't going to hit. None of it was going to hit during a pandemic. So I thought Chris Hedges, specifically on Biden's full record, because Biden's a very lucky man. If it wasn't for a media that completely gave him a free pass this entire time, if it wasn't for the behind-the-scenes machinations of the Democratic Party, getting people to drop out at the last minute to help him, if it wasn't for media's adoring coverage of him between South Carolina and Super Tuesday, I don't think he'd be the one facing Donald Trump. But that's neither here or there. Anything that stood out to you? And by the way, thank you for the super chat. Ricky, $20. We are in inverted totalitarianism. Sheldon Wolin was ahead of his time. I'll check him out. John, $5. Working people have no country, nation. Working people of the world unite. Join socialist alternative to build a working class. Fight back. #world to win. I like that. Any thoughts on what Chris said?
I think overall, the way that he speaks and the encyclopedia of knowledge that he is, you can see clearly why he's been blacklisted from mainstream media.
Right.
Yeah.
And thank you on the GoFundMe. Andrea, $20 just now. Adrian, $5. Al, $20. Could we get to $125,000 raised
I think
today?
we can. Let's do it, guys.
And Jen has a much better, shinier, positive disposition than I do. So, Jen.
You're jolly Jordan.
Why is it? So many people have given already. Mm-hmm. And by the way, to be clear, if you're new here, we certainly don't have that much in the bank.
No.
We've spent quite a lot as we go.
It's been over 2 years,
yeah,
I think, at this
we've been
point.
reporting in the field and spending the donations on travel, equipment, freelance journalists, advertising, a $25,000 live view, which is how we broadcast. So don't get it twisted that we have that much. We don't. But
the cost for a company that reports in the field is dramatically more than for a company or reporters or commentators that simply report from a studio. So
right.
That's what the money has gone toward, and that's why we, continue to fundraise. And so we're going back out in the field this coming week. It's time for the election. We're heading into it screaming, kicking and screaming, but here it comes. So we need your help to get out in the field. We need your help to pay our freelance cameraman John, and for travel.
And can I just say straight up, and I know my beautiful wife is watching, so I don't want to trigger her, but I'm just going to keep it real. It's not exactly risk-free to go report, outside of your studio on Tuesday. It's not without risk. I mean, if you've been following the chatter, my wife does it for a living. Jen is in a lot of these groups. There are a lot of threats out there for violence on election day. I'm not saying that to, dramatize. I'm saying it because it's true. And Jen's got 2 kids. I've got a wife now and a dog soon. And, we want to report, but we also are going to have to be careful ourselves because you just never know. Trump, between him, stand back, stand by to the Proud Boys, to him, I don't even think he's dog whistling anymore, just blaring the siren. My wife and other security professionals have said they've never seen this level of preempted threats of violence and intimidation at polling places. We know a lot, we know this country is gun crazy. So I say all this just so you know, we're not going out there. We're going out there because we think it's important, even between 2 candidates we do not care for. But there are risks. This is not to say we're any better than our friends in progressive media that don't go out there and stay in a studio.
We're a little better.
Yeah, we're a little better. It ain't easy to be up against Joe Rogan and Kyle Kalinske and I guess Alex Jones.
And Alex Jones.
We know we're not going to be the most watched live stream on election night, but we hope you could support us at any amount. Our preference is signing up as a member.
And you know what? Oh, go ahead.
Statuscoup.com/join for as low as $5 a month. You'll be able to join our members-only Discord when you sign up, as well as get access to our members' calls and other behind-the-scenes content. But if you for whatever reason can't do a monthly amount, GoFundMe is right there, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, to kind of drive the point home of this isn't nothing. Like going out in the field can be a danger. Hooked to my backpack. As I said, I drove to Jordan and Annotts today. Hooked to my backpack are two, hard helmets, a really high-rated gas mask, goggles. I would have my bulletproof vest if I didn't have to leave the plates back in Portland because they were super outdated. So it's not a joke. They're right out in the open planning to cause a lot of trouble on election day. So if you can support us, please pop some money in the GoFundMe. Not if you can't afford it, but if you can, it really goes to true in-field journalism. You are the reason we've been able to report on the houselessness crisis, on the Proud Boys, on the severity of the derangement of Trump supporters and QAnon supporters, of the indigenous fights against the border wall, where they are driving the wall through indigenous lands. Unfortunately, we couldn't do as much reporting on that as we wanted. Jordan's been all over the country, South Bend, and you can run through your list, but we've been everywhere, and we've covered so much, and that's because of you guys. Flint, of course, and more coming on that. So if you want to help, if you want to make a real difference, either help and pop some money in the GoFundMe or join as a member for $5 a month, statuscoup.com/join. And as I said, Jolly Jordan, you'll make him even jollier if you do either of those things or both of those things.
And we should point out, my wife told me this and somebody just said it, if Walmart has discontinued guns sales before the election.
Well, they're still selling, but they've hidden them.
No, I think they...
Oh, the last I read, they were just hiding them.
They just removed it from the shelves right now. If Walmart, one of the greediest companies on earth, is discontinuing gun sales, they're not doing that without knowing something you don't know or I don't know. I have no problem saying we're going to be careful. If we feel we're in a situation that's not safe, we will not be there. I don't think reporting on this election is worth either of our lives. But I also will say that I think it's important to be out there because we need to know what we're up against either way. And I don't think, and you should know, by the way, you don't see it on camera, but when CNN reports from these things, when they're out at protests in Minneapolis after the George Floyd protests, they have security with them. So does MSNBC. They're off camera, but they have corporate security with them. Hey, good for you if you could afford it, because you're owned by a multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerate. I won't get into what we have or don't have, but let's just say we don't have what they have. So definitely support us if you can. Changing gear, I do want to talk about, I don't really want to get into the horse race and each state and whatever. I will say, I don't know if this matters because, every different there's so many different pollsters and this and that, but Trump has narrowly closed the gap among battleground states.
Before it disappears, shout out to Mini Ninjala, $4.99 in the super duper chat. You all are doing great field work. Hedges is a true leader. Thank you. Yeah, it's awesome.
So this is Real Clear Politics, which is kind of the industry leader. You got Biden across the key battleground states is up by 3.5, almost 3.5. Florida, Biden up by 1.2. Essentially that's a toss-up. Pennsylvania, Biden up about 4. This is the average of all the polls. Michigan, Biden up by 6.5. Wisconsin, Biden up by 6.5. North Carolina, Biden up by just a point, and Arizona tied. So honestly, I would tell you, and I believe this is why you see Obama going with Biden tomorrow to Michigan. I think this is why you see Trump doing multiple rallies in Michigan. He did multiple rallies in Michigan the other day. He's in Michigan today. I would venture to guess that there's internal polling that both sides have that put Michigan closer to 4 to 5 points. Pennsylvania, I would venture to guess, is closer than a lot of the polls think. A lot of the polls say. Right now, I think it's Biden's race to lose, but I do think also there is a factor here that, frankly, I think does possibly bring in the Republican 6-3 Supreme Court, and that is the fact that I think that on election day and election night, it's very possible that Trump is going to have a lead. It's very possible that Trump is going to have a lead because in a lot of the key battleground states, Pennsylvania, we have this article here, Pennsylvania saying that they're not going to have all the votes counted until possibly Friday of next week. So that's 3 days after the election. Other battleground states with the influx of mail-in ballots are not going to have all the ballots counted. And why that, technically, if you're Biden, I guess you could consider it's a good thing because Trump could have a lead on election day because there's more Republicans expected to come out on election day because, they're truthers and don't believe there's a pandemic or much danger, or c'est la vie, if I get it, I get it. We've gotten those reactions. Mm-hmm. But why I think this is dangerous is because we obviously live in a post-truth society. The media is completely tribal. And if Trump has a significant lead on election night, who's to say? Trump is not going to declare himself the winner. Who's to say? All those judges that Mitch McConnell has stacked all over the country, conservative judges, Pennsylvania. Right now, a temporary victory for Biden and the Democrats. Supreme Court would not hear or would not make a decision on Pennsylvania and North Carolina mail-in balloting, which allows an extension of absentee ballots and mail-in ballots. U.S. Supreme Court has rejected a last-minute plea from Pennsylvania Republicans to overturn a 3-day extension of the absentee ballot deadline, a hugely consequential ruling in one of the most closely watched swing states in the presidential election. The state usually requires ballots to arrive by 8 p.m. on election night in order to count, but last night, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court extended that deadline by 3 days for ballots postmarked by Election Day, a move likely to allow thousands of late-arriving ballots to count. That was one defeat. Then you have Trump very pissy on Twitter over North Carolina. The Supreme Court has rejected a bid from the Republicans to block North Carolina's absentee ballot extension. The orange one tweeted, "This decision is crazy and so bad for our country. Can you imagine what will happen during that 9-day period? The election should end on November 3rd. So why I'm bringing these things up, and by the way, the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh made a comment, Judge Kavanaugh and others, that they might have decided not to overrule the Pennsylvania and North Carolina state courts now, but that doesn't mean that the Supreme Court can't overrule it after the election. So my point is, I could just picture this right now, this horrifying scenario. Let's just say Trump is, Trump's leading significantly on election day. He's at, let's say 220, 230 electoral college votes. Biden's behind because Biden is obviously going to have a lot of his vote being mail-in, absentee, whatever. Trump declares victory. You have this, which I believe is the Republican strategy. Republicans gear up for day of and post-election day litigation. I think that is their plan. just making the 2000 recount look like child's play. I'll quickly read this. Republican Party officials say they're already looking to Pennsylvania, Minnesota, and Nevada as likely battlegrounds for post-election lawsuits if the results are close. The big picture, as pre-election lawsuits draw to a close, and with President Trump running behind Biden in national and many battleground polls, Republicans are turning their attention to preparations for Election Day and beyond and potential recounts. They have 50,000 volunteers, attorneys, and staff working Election Day operations with an emphasis in presidential battleground states. A multi-state wave of litigation brought by Republicans and Democrats could unfold over the course of several days next week, where and over what depends on the margins of victory in each state. Quote, there's a good chance you won't see any litigation if an election outcome does not hinge on the ballots set aside, one GOP official with the planning said on a call with reporters. But if it's really close, to be frank, these ballots are going to become a point of contention. Well, Jen, I don't know. I remember a time when hundreds of thousands of ballots were tossed in the United Corporations of America. Do we think with now a 6-3 Supreme Court with Amy Coney Barrett, you know more than I do, but her questionable Handmaid's Tale background.
Oh my God.
Darling of the Christian right. Mm-hmm. If Trump is up on Election Day, I do not have a lot of confidence. Let's say there were 2 to 3 million outstanding mail-in ballots that still needed to be counted across the battleground states. You remember hanging chads?
Oh my God.
You remember all these things? I cannot see a scenario where more than 60 to 70% of those would be counted. And I do believe there is a phenomena of the shy Trump voter. I really do.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just see a scenario. We also know that Democrats, they have a lot of lawyers, but they are not cutthroat like Republicans, and they don't have the spine necessary to fight this, if necessary, for months and months. So basically, I think if Trump has a significant lead on election night, which he might because Biden is depending so much on Election Day polls, and particularly Florida is one state that Trump has to win. But Florida is one of the battleground states that is expected to actually us know the result by election night because they start counting ballots before Election Day, whereas in Pennsylvania, they could only start counting the ballots on Election Day, even the mail-in ballots. So, yeah, I think we're in a scenario that, I think the Republicans could steal it.
I agree with you, and I think that the Democrats, while they will try, I don't think they care enough to fight it to the end. Partially because their pockets will explode with money if they lose the battle. The Lincoln Project's pockets will be stuffed to the brim.
Do you know that the Lincoln Project has now said they're going to be creating a media outlet?
Yes. They are, they got big plans. So even if Trump wins, they're going to be creating this media outlet. So great job, centrist Democrats. You've now given neocons a media network. Great job on your resistance there. So either way, it's not gonna be good. I don't think the Democrats have it in them to fight. And really, when it comes down to it, it's all about the money that they can earn. So I do have a lot of worries about what's to come. I'm extremely nervous about this week. I don't think it's going to be an easy win on either side. So.
And thank you very much for the donation. Kathy, $20. Terrence, $5. Holy cow, we're less than $400 away.
Woohoo.
Less than $400 to 125K. I'll tell you what, if we could head into the weekend at the 125K mark, I will do, I will have one hell of a night. And Status Coup will have one hell of a weekend. What I'm saying is we'll feel a lot more confident about going out into the field because it costs money. I mean, the bottom line is I don't want to give you to the letter of the law. It's not cheap to have a cameraman, traveling expenses, gas for the car, food, hotel. We're not flying in this case, but a lot of expenses that add up. So definitely pitch in if you can.
We also have some super chats. So thank you, John McKeon, $5 in the super duper chat. If there was ever time for a general strike, it is now. Voting can never solve our problems. We need organized and sustained civil disobedience now. I completely agree. Hector Villeda, $4.99 in the super chat. Have you reported any recent news about the millions of Americans that may face evictions? Has Biden mentioned this? Seems like nobody cares about it. Well, I can tell you, Jordan has for damn sure reported on it. He's one of the only ones.
1 second. Can I answer that real quickly?
What's happening?
Millions and millions of people have been laid off. Millions more have had their hours cut. We're kind of living in a quiet, silent depression. What do you call 45 million people filing for unemployment?
$1,200 in 3 months makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense.
Everybody should be paying attention to what's going on because this is happening in every county, not just Louisville, Kentucky. And that's why the world is like, wait a minute, enough's enough.
And one thing I do know is if you're not sitting at the table, you are on the menu. And it seems like we continue to be on the menu.
I don't want to have to lose everything that we worked really hard for. We've been struggling for 5 years, and then we finally got everything together, and it just instantly went away.
Literally driving across the country during the pandemic, talking to people, finding out what's going on.
But there are people such as yourself and other people that are telling the true story of what is happening.
All of these black people have been assassinated by police in this city, and none of them have been brought to justice.
People don't really care about those things in places where, you know, we're not New York, we're not Chicago, we're not Minneapolis, we're Louisville, Kentucky.
If somebody calls you screaming for help at 911, they never treated her. They never came to her apartment, nothing.
Vote, and do what's right in your heart, because change comes from within. So as long as your heart is pure and you're doing what's right, that's what matters.
So if that answers your question, yes, we've discussed evictions. I just talked to Chris Hedges about it. Frankly, I think I think Rising has done a good job covering the real life misery and economic hunger games going on right now. But I think we, more than anyone, has been covering the disaster out there right now.
Yeah. It's really important to us to show exactly what is going on with everyday people out there for sure. Oh my goodness, Jordan. This is amazing. This is incredible. $99.99 from PunchCat07 in the super chat.
PunchCat. I mean, I don't like cats, but I don't want to punch them. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you so much for the wonderful.
We love cats.
Wonderful super chat. That's very,
Jordan
very helpful.
will learn to love cats.
Very, very helpful. And yeah, keep it coming.
We also have some new Status Coup members. Super exciting. So, well, that doesn't.
Welcome, Phil. Welcome, Mercedes.
Yay.
Michael, Monica, Tyler, Christopher, Jeff.
Oh my gosh.
All sign up since yesterday and today. So we're back to 1,700 members. And let's get back to 2,000. Boy, we'd be doing a lot more, less GoFundMe if we could get this number up.
We need to get to 2,000 members. That would help us so much. If you are not a member yet, please sign up. Just $5 a month. statuscoup.com/join.
Yes.
For sure.
So the other thing I'll say here about election night, I got to tell you, it kind of reminds me a little bit of 2016. I mean, I hate to say it, but Trump is out hustling Biden. I mean, Biden's doing maybe 2 events a day. In my emails, I keep getting him calling a lid, which just means
constant
ending the day, like calling a lid early, which you have to wonder why.
Like sometimes it's like 8 a.m. and he calls a lid.
Why is he ending the day so early? Is something going on? Trump outworked and out hustled Hillary Clinton. Trump actually went to a ton of rural areas in these states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, where Hillary didn't bother. She just went to the big cities. And Biden has really been going to a lot of the big cities, some of the rural areas. So if it's close, the fact that Trump is hitting, 3 or 4 areas in Michigan today. Pennsylvania, he's like living in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, all over.
He went to Nebraska to guarantee they're based on one congressional district, I believe, like Maine. And also, to be honest with you, I think that, he's sending Kamala Harris. He's not going himself. But I think this is fool's gold. Like Hillary Clinton, spending so much time trying to win Arizona in 2016 rather than solidifying Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris is in Texas. Michael Bloomberg is flooding money in Texas. I don't know. I don't live in Texas, but I don't quite think Texas is there yet, even for a Republican like Joe Biden to go blue. Could be wrong. We'll see. But I don't know. Just something in me. I will be happy if I have egg on my face. But something in me tells me that there's a little last minute. I think there's a last minute closing of the gap that you'll see. I think Biden will have comfortable leads in most of the battleground states, but I also think you could have potentially Trump's base, but him running up the margins in a lot of key areas in Michigan, Pennsylvania, of more of his supporters out. So you just don't know. I think anyone who says they know for sure, I spoke with my father-in-law this morning who said it's over, this and that. I think that's the wrong attitude. I think it's not over. I think Donald Trump, despite his disastrous handling of coronavirus, shameful, really. Today he's literally mocking Laura Ingraham, the Fox News anchor, who I have no interest in defending, but he mocked her for wearing a mask at his Michigan rally. Oh, Laura being politically correct. Donald Trump is so responsible for this toxic culture war that has become masks. And that's why we had 88,000 deaths yesterday. Record number. No, not deaths, excuse me. Yeah. 88,000 cases yesterday. Record number in America. I'm not blaming it all on Trump. I'm blaming a lot of it on Trump. Because you want to know something? It could have been completely the opposite. He could have been an authoritarian. He could have locked down the country, acted like the strong man, acted like the tough guy. He could have turned it around and said, you're a commie, you're a socialist if you won't wear the mask. And his supporters would have ate it up. It's not about the mask, it's about following him. And I think, I hate to make predictions, but I think my gut is Biden's going to win, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. I think it's going to be a lot of fuckery. I think Trump will win Florida. And frankly, I don't want to say this just because we're going there. I think it's going to come down to Pennsylvania, and I'll tell you why. Trump has to win one of those 3 states, one of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. I think it's over for him in Wisconsin. I think particularly since Wisconsin has had such a massive outbreak with COVID. I also think the Foxconn scam that Trump promised this new factory was going to be like 20,000 jobs. I don't even think it's open right now. Well, it's open, but not for what they said it was going to be. I think Wisconsin's done. I think Michigan will be closer than people think, but I think Biden's going to win Michigan. I think Pennsylvania, Trump has a chance because Pennsylvania's kind of got a lot of those old school Reagan Democrats. The whole birth of the Reagan Democrat was in parts of Pennsylvania, and a lot of them flipped to Trump in 2016, and I think a lot of them still support Trump. We've been in Pennsylvania, not recently, but when we were in Pennsylvania, you see a lot of Trump signage. Not in Philadelphia, but in the western part of the state, even in the middle of the state. And those suburbs. Hillary Clinton won some of the suburban counties in Philadelphia by only a point or 2. So it's not guaranteed that they're going to go for Biden. That's why I think that Trump has missed opportunities here by not going after Biden on NAFTA, TPP. In the debates, he barely mentioned it. I don't know which pollsters or who gave him advice to make Joe Biden a socialist boogeyman. Nobody believes that. I wish it were true, but nobody believes that. What do you think about what I'm saying?
So I'm really conflicted, and it's hard to make predictions, of course. So my prediction, based on all the factors that you mentioned, I think that Biden will technically win the election, and I think that Trump will serve as president for another 4 years, based on stealing it and winning through litigation.
Well, we also should say, I don't want to interrupt you. You say I do often.
Well, I don't just say you do. You do.
But no, my point is, let me ask you. I mean, Democrats, we criticize them, but there's really nothing they can do if the Supreme Court steals it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Supreme Court's the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. So if the Supreme Court steals it, which, by the way, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett were all on Bush's 2000 election recount. This ain't their first rodeo.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and I think Barrett were all lawyers on Bush's 2000 theft. That's
dire.
So
that's real dire.
There's not much Democrats could do. So I'm just saying.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I don't have much hope for next week. Not that, Biden winning certainly wouldn't be like a win for humanity. He would be not a fascist, which is good. But I do think we're going to end up with another Trump presidency either way. I hope that I am wrong. But yeah, I don't think we're lucky enough to have Trump lose.
So let's take a couple questions, comments, concerns before we move to the next topic.
We do have another super chat. Thank you, Peace Power, $5 in the super chat. Status Coup, check Whitney Webb's work. Cyber Reason Election 2020 simulation with plan to implicate white supremacy and other groups as terrorists and reel in a bunch of us. So I don't quite understand what you're saying. So I think you're saying that they're saying that implicating white supremacy as terrorists is a fake thing. It's not fake. So I don't know. I respect Whitney Webb, but if that's what you're saying, that it's fake, it's simply not. It's real.
I want to move on to Greenwald.
Yes, let's.
I talked a lot about it yesterday, but I want to bring you into it. When I was live yesterday, I didn't have the Intercept statement. I also hadn't read his article. To tell you the truth, I haven't read the full article because it's extremely long. I've read most of it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, obviously Glenn Greenwald resigned from the Intercept yesterday. To me, this story in particular is not only about Glenn Greenwald and the Intercept. I think it's about the entire media and censorship and just the fact that corporations have hijacked our media, and even the so-called independent left media has in many ways been hijacked.
Yep.
But I'll read you the Intercept statement, which frankly was pretty fucking scorching.
It's very.
Not mincing words at all.
Do you have Betsy's too? Separately?
That is.
Well, hers was more. There was.
I think this is hers because this is from Betsy Reed.
There were two. Okay.
Okay.
I'll find the.
Glenn Greenwald's decision to resign from the Intercept stems from a fundamental disagreement over the role of editors in the production of journalism and the nature of censorship. Glenn demands the absolute right to determine what he will publish. He believes that anyone who disagrees with him is corrupt, and anyone who presumes to edit his words is a censor. Thus, the preposterous charge that the Intercept's editors and reporters, with the lone noble exception of Glenn Greenwald, have betrayed our mission to engage in fearless investigative journalism because we have been seduced by the lure of a Joe Biden presidency. A brief glance at the stories the Intercept has published on Biden will suffice to refute those claims. The narrative Glenn presents about his departure is teeming with distortions and inaccuracies, all of them designed to make him appear as a victim rather than a grown person throwing a tantrum. It would take too long to point them all out here, but we intend to correct the record in time. For now, it's important to make clear that our goal in editing his work was to ensure that it would be accurate and fair. While he accuses us of political bias, it was he who was attempting to recycle the dubious claims of a political campaign, the Trump campaign, and launder them as journalism. I think that part's important. I want to get back to that in a minute. We have the greatest respect for the journalist Glenn Greenwald used to be. So they're basically saying now he's what? a hack. I don't know what they're trying to say. We have greatest respect for the journalist Glenn used to be, and we remain proud of much of the work we did with him over the past 6 years. It is Glenn who has strayed from his original journalistic roots, not The Intercept. The defining feature of The Intercept's work in recent years has been the investigative journalism that came out of painstaking work by our staffers in Washington, D.C., New York, and across the rest of the country. It is the staff of The Intercept that has been carrying out our investigative mission, a mission that has involved a collaborative editing process. We have no doubt that Glenn will go on to launch a new media venture where he will face no collaboration with editors, such as the era of Substack and Patreon. In that context, it makes good business sense for Glenn to position himself as the last true guardian of investigative journalism and to smear his longtime colleagues and friends as partisan hacks. We get it, but facts are facts, and The Intercept's record of fearless, rigorous, independent journalism speaks for itself.
There's a bitchier one.
So, I got a lot to say, but, Jen, what are your thoughts since this is the first time you're talking about this?
Okay, so pull up it so I can see. So, in general, my take, I think that there's another version, like a shorter version.
I think she gave a comment to the Washington Post. I think that's what you're talking
Somewhere there's floating around, there's one, I'll go ahead and say it. Somewhere floating around, there's a shorter, bitchier one where she really tears into him in a not nice way. I think it was not, first of all, I think it was pretty unprofessional on The Intercept's part, on Betsy's part. I will say I am coming into this with preconceived ideas about Betsy, for good reason.
I don't want to get too into that, but let's just say the Cliff Notes version is The Intercept and I had a little back and forth because the first outlet that reported on my firing from the Young Turks was The Intercept, and frankly, it was basically a press release written by the Young Turks. And they reported that the Young Turks had investigated, that the Young Turks had investigated an accusation against me of sexual assault, which was 100% a lie. Well, the accusation was not true, but also they did not investigate it. Actually, my former boss, Cenk, openly on camera, he lied about everything else on that camera, but openly said we did not investigate that. So I didn't think it was, my lawyer didn't think it was too much of an ask. I didn't think it was too much of an ask. I wasn't asking them to completely retract the story. I did get fired from the Young Turks. It is what it is. I asked them to correct that there was an investigation done, because by putting in there was an investigation done and then I was fired, kind of makes it look like they found something here that I did that was very, very wrong. And obviously, if I didn't do that, which I didn't, it's not accurate to say there was an investigation done. This was not like a small thing, like, you want them to change wording on something. You can't report that the Young Turks actually investigated an accusation against me if they didn't, because it gives off the impression that the Young Turks found something damning regarding that allegation, and that's why I was fired. So there was a back and forth with myself and The Intercept. Jen was part of that. My lawyer was part of that. So that's what you're referencing.
Yeah.
With that said, full disclosure, I've reached out to Ryan Grimm in the not so distant past about trying to publish some of our reporting there. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not pleased with how things went and how they treated me. And you have no idea the intransigence and stubbornness that I dealt with for them to just subtly correct it. They didn't fully correct it, but just to correct that factual inaccuracy took months of going back and forth, their lawyer and my lawyer. But putting that all aside, I could objectively look at this, but I want to know what you think first.
Yeah, so, they're Betsy's purporting to be, or for The Intercept or presenting The Intercept as being this like beacon of truth and light, and saying it lives up to to Glenn's vision for what it was going to be, when in reality, when that's not the reality at all. They totally screwed up with Reality Winner. People should have gotten fired over that. And I think the reason that no one did is because they won't even admit that it was their fault. They're paying her legal bills and stuff, that they don't want to come forward and say like, oh yeah, we did screw up. There was a huge New York Times expose on that, but they screwed up in such elementary ways. I think my 10-year-old would have done a better job with the security of Reality Winner's whistleblowing than The Intercept did. So The Intercept has screwed up. They haven't accepted, as Glenn pointed out, they haven't accepted really hard-hitting investigative stories. Instead, they didn't cover the Julian Assange extradition hearing. They haven't covered so many important things in favor of neoliberal corporatist content. So Betsy is, Glenn was fairly respectful in his letters, in his communications. Yeah, he was harsh and like Glenish. I mean, Glenn can be catty and petty. Like if you follow his Twitter at all, like Glenn can be pretty petty. But he was respectful towards Betsy and even gave her like a positive shout out. Same with Naomi Klein, who also threw him under the bus eventually, on Twitter.
We're going to get to that.
Yeah. So for, I think Betsy's response, to kind of wrap my thoughts up on this, I think it was unprofessional. I think it was cruel. And I think it doesn't do her any favors. The reason The Intercept is able to raise the money it has, apart from the money it gets from Pierre Omidyar, founder of eBay, rich guy whose money doesn't go to very good places, apart from, I guess you could argue, The Intercept, they've raised their money based on Glenn's name. So they're not in a good spot right now. And I think Betsy was totally wrong. I think she does not come across well.
Well, I will say, to be totally fair, Glenn was on Rising this morning with Crystal and Sagar, and he did say that Pierre Omidyar, the billionaire founder of The Intercept, did honor his promise to never interject.
Yeah, and he wrote that in his letter too, which is good. Like that's
so.
That's
I will say, we give crap for outlets that have these billionaire owners. Hey, I'm telling you straight up, I don't know how you feel. If Pierre Omidyar would sign on the line in writing, I will have no say or day-to-day involvement or editorial say. Here's $500,000. Yeah, I'd consider it strongly.
I think
I'd have to look more into him. But the point is,
that's what Jank said with Katzenberg, and everyone still.
Right. Well, that's clearly not what happened.
Exactly. Well,
but
that's true.
I actually think, based on the statement I saw from The Intercept, but more so just reading the story. And full disclosure, I have not read the full story. It's very long, and I've been busy.
It's so long. Maybe it needed to be edited.
But to me, there's so many things here, and so many ways of looking about this. But at the basic level, okay, what you have to understand, and let me say this as somebody who's worked in corporate media. Let me tell you this as somebody who has worked for independent media, and now somebody who works for our own company. The bottom line is, editors on the totem pole are higher than reporters. But at the end of the day, it's all subjective. All of this is subjective. Editors are human beings. So their edits over reporters doesn't mean that they know more than the reporter because they're an editor. It doesn't mean that they're right. It just means that they have subjective opinions. They have their political biases. And oftentimes, not consciously, but oftentimes the political biases of, and the also subconscious fears of editors makes them give notes to seasoned reporters like Glenn Greenwald that are just not valid. I'll give you a perfect example, and I'm not, I actually am very grateful that Vice did the story with us on Flint. Took a lot longer than it should have, but at least they did it. But we had an editor, lovely person. I have no issue with her, but I do think that she, in particular, was over cautious in reporting certain things as fact. Or the lawyer certainly was, but I think the editor was overcautious on reporting certain things as fact that we had more than enough evidence for that was fact, because frankly, she didn't want to take the risk. And I think that's what, she didn't want to take the risk of the blowback. And I think when I read Glenn's piece, I really see that as the story here. To me, the editors of The Intercept, I don't know if I agree with Glenn that they're all like closet Biden supporters. I mean, The Intercept, to be fair, has done a lot of critical reporting on Biden. Glenn made the point during his interview with Rising, which I think is fair. Yeah, that reporting was during the primary. They haven't really been critically reporting on Biden now that it's Biden versus Trump. I think that's a fair point. But at the end of the day, the piece that Glenn wrote, I'll finish it tonight, did have several areas where he did acknowledge there's no evidence as of now. There's no evidence Joe Biden did anything wrong. He did put caveats. We don't know definitively if Joe Biden met with this Ukrainian Burisma executive, which bottom line, if you peel back the Hunter Biden story, that's what the story is about. Did Joe Biden, as the New York Post is claiming and reporting, did Biden as vice president meet with a Ukrainian oil guy who was a board member or an advisor to the board of Burisma, whose son was totally ridiculously making $50,000 a month to do nothing? Did Biden meet with that executive? And did less than a year later, Biden interject into Ukrainian politics to get a prosecutor who was investigating said company fired? Biden's campaign never denied it. They gave the classic non-denial that, well, we don't see it on the calendar. Like I said, hey, Jen, if we're in the mob, do we put it on our Microsoft Outlook calendar? Hey, let's meet and go over the hit. So that's what it's about. And I thought Glenn's piece pretty painstakingly pointed out, we don't, as of now, it's kind of like innocent till proven guilty. There's no firm evidence that Biden met with this executive, that Biden profited off of this, but there are significant questions. That's the difference.
Yeah.
There's no evidence, but there's certain questions, and I think Glenn rightly criticized the media for acting like those questions are conspiracy theories.
Right.
So I not only read most of the story, but I also read Glenn posted the emails between himself, his editor on the story, and then the editor-in-chief. And I thought the editor-in-chief made some points that were valid, but the key here is, and it's all on Glenn's Substack, to me, the editors did not make a point about factual inaccuracies that Glenn was posting. And that's what I don't understand here. Betsy Reed, the editor-in-chief, in the scathing message about Glenn, said that it was Glenn who was attempting to recycle the dubious claims of a political campaign, the Trump campaign, and launder them as journalism. But that's the point.
Right.
We don't know if that full story is dubious. Jen, if you didn't meet with an oil executive from Ukraine, wouldn't you just say, I never met with that person, prove I met with him?
Indeed.
Like, it's crazy.
It's pretty simple.
Right. So the Intercept, this right here is the whole thing. Like, the Intercept's making it seem like he was laundering, conspiracies from Rudy Giuliani. But to this day, we have no idea if Biden met with this person. Biden said, I never had anything to do with Hunter's business. Well, if he met with that guy, he certainly did. So to me, I think the Intercept, frankly, to be fair to the Intercept, it seems like they were willing to publish the story. They just didn't want to publish it as is, exactly in pure form, the way Glenn did it. And I think when you're at a certain level, which Glenn is, he's won a Pulitzer Prize. He's won, God knows, a lot of awards. The only edits that you really should be doing are edits for glaring factual inaccuracies. And like Glenn said, a lot of the notes that the editors wrote to him in that email thread where they're going back and forth seem to me just that you have a different opinion Not that
Right.
the story not that what Glenn wanted to publish had factual inaccuracies.
Well, Glenn actually does that in his response to the first editor. He, point by point, pulls out the editor's suggestion. Then he pulls out the piece in his article that addresses that exact, issue that the editor brought up. So he had already addressed many of these things. So I don't know if it seemed like the editor was slow walking it and Glenn knew that this piece needed to get out ASAP or what. So obviously Glenn knows more about what went on behind the scenes.
And I also think that, at the end of the day, I don't think this was only about this one piece. It seems that there was a lot of things building up between Glenn and the Intercept. Frankly, Glenn, I don't want to speak for him, but he has said that himself, Jeremy Scahill, Laura Poitras, they co-founded it in 2014 with their own vision, but they did make the decision to totally give up any control of the day-to-day management, that they would not be managing reporters, that they wouldn't be editing stories, that they would just be journalists there. And what's-her-face, Betsy Reed would be the editor-in-chief. And, I think when you do that, okay, you're basically giving control of the outlet you launched and your vision. It would basically be, it's basically the equivalent of like us launching this, then because we don't want to run the day-to-day, which I would love not to, basically hiring someone to like run, run the news and editorial, and us having to basically follow like their vision. Besides my ego, why would I ever do that?
Right.
I'll give you an example, and this is not out of bitterness, it's just a good example. At the Young Turks, my first year, to Cenk's credit, I had complete control. It was like the wild, wild west out there. I was able to pick the places I would go cover. I was able to cover things the way I wanted to cover them. Flint, Standing Rock, all those things. I really never got a no from Cenk, to his credit. For some reason, I had wild success that first year. The channel grew like to 140,000 subscribers in a year. For some reason, he hired some cable news executive from MSNBC to be my boss in the second year and be my manager. And that guy came in heavy-handed with like a 14-page thing about how we were going to make TYT Politics, the channel that I created, basically like investigating Trump headquarters. And I said to Jake, like, what the fuck is this? Like, I don't mind having a manager. I wasn't exactly at like Glenn Greenwald levels, but like, if it ain't broke, why fix it? And I think that's the problem here. When you're somebody at Glenn's level, I get it. He doesn't really want to be edited because like he's at a point in his career that, again, unless there's something so glaring, so factually inaccurate, that it's not a question of like, oh, we're going to be slammed by other outlets for reporting on this, but it's like, no, we might have legal liability here. But Glenn is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. He doesn't really report things that are not factual. To me, I think it's very simple. I think that not just the Intercept, but the wider corporate media, and I would put the Intercept somewhat into that category, they've bought into this bullshit that like, if not for over covering Hillary's emails, if not for reporting on the Podesta emails, if not for James Comey, Hillary would have won. And as a result, they've overcompensated, they've overcorrected to basically anything critical of Biden. In the primary, they didn't even touch that he lied about meeting with Nelson Mandela in apartheid South Africa, that he lied about participating in civil rights sit-ins. He's lied about many things. I think the Intercept, frankly, I don't know if it's as much that, like, as Glenn said, all of them desperately want Trump to lose, or Biden to win, because they hate Trump that much. As it is, they were deathly afraid of touching the Hunter Biden thing and being looked at as having anything to do, if Trump were to win, that they were complicit in that.
Very well put. Do we have the other? I was actually really surprised, moving back to the people who threw Glenn under the bus, I was surprised that so many leftist reporters and journalists were not Team Glenn.
You were surprised that Chris Hayes tweeted
I'm
LOL,
definitely not talking about Chris Hayes. I'm talking about, people that I have on my leftist Twitter list. Like, I don't know.
Let me show you Naomi Klein.
Yeah, let's talk. Exactly. She's one.
So Naomi Klein, who, let's just be clear before I get into it. I just got to be clear. And Glenn kind of said this on Rising. There's a significant amount of people at the Intercept, including Naomi Klein, if we're being honest, make a shit ton of money and do a whole lot of nothing. I like Naomi Klein. I think I've seen 3 pieces.
Her books are great.
I think I've seen her write 3 pieces at the Intercept. I think she's done a video or 2. I think she's been on the payroll for 2 years. She makes a lot of money there. I mean, you could look it up. She makes a lot of money.
Not a bad gig.
Glenn, frankly, and he admitted this. He said this in his Rising interview this morning. He didn't say how much he made. I mean, that you could look up. It was a lot, $500,000 a year. And he didn't do a lot. I mean, I don't say this as a criticism, but Glenn was not reporting every day. He was doing a lot of media critiques, a lot of Twitter. Hands down, his Brazil reporting was amazing.
No, his life was, at risk too.
No, I know, but other than the Bolsonaro thing, day to day, he wasn't breaking stories every day that. And a lot of the heavy rollers at the Intercept that make a lot of money, don't actually, in terms of quantity, do that much.
Right.
So Naomi Klein, who again is one of those people, I respect her, I like her books, I think she's brilliant on the climate crisis, disaster capitalism, but she kind of had this backwards compliment for Glenn and then attacked him. You want to read it?
Sure. So Naomi quote tweeted Ryan Grimm, who is someone else that Glenn kind of gave a nice shout out to. He also gave a nice shout out to Naomi Klein and his stuff. So Naomi said, "I'm grateful to Glenn for helping to found such an important media outlet. The Intercept is run by editors who give us all exceptional freedom to write and speak while also telling us when we are losing the plot. It's an honor to work with them. Become a member today." And then she goes on in another tweet below that in the thread, "Glenn was not censored. He was edited, and edited well. Crying censorship is a marketing ploy to gin up subscribers for his new Substack. Are people really going to fall for it?" Which is just absurd. That is an absurd statement to make. It makes no sense at all. So she thinks that...
She also kind of made it seem like Glenn is...
Oh, yeah.
allowing the Trump campaign to, benefit by trying to bring up the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden story.
Yeah.
That tweet that says unavailable was actually a tweet from Don Jr. referencing that Glenn Greenwald resigned because the Intercept, fought him on that story.
Yep. Yeah, it's just absurd, and it was really disappointing from Naomi Klein. She didn't have to throw Glenn under the bus. I know that she has a really cushy gig there at the Intercept, but there's also integrity. And her saying, he was edited and edited well. No, he wasn't edited well, as Glenn pointed out point by point. And also accusing him of it being a marketing ploy to gin up subscribers for a Substack is just ridiculous. Who would leave a $500,000 a year job where you really don't have to do much for a Substack? That's ridiculous.
By the way, it wasn't only the 500. Glenn pointed it out. They paid for his security. They paid for his lawyers. There was one other thing that they paid for. So, they paid for a lot of things on top of his very, very large salary. And the key here is, and again, I like Naomi Klein. I like her work. I just think she's completely wrong, and there's no other way to say this. But I think this is the key. This sentence is really what stood out to me. When she says, Intercept is run by editors who give us all exceptional freedom to write and speak while also telling us when we are losing the plot. So let me be clear, because I've edited people. I, at previous jobs, edited other people's work. There is times when an editor has to edit somebody because they don't know how to write. They take 10 paragraphs to get to the actual news of what the story is. They, frankly, are terrible writers. They write things that literally are not true, but, whatever. There is a role for editors, but it's not an editor's role in terms of dealing with somebody like Glenn Greenwald. Again, I'm not saying he walks on water, but he's a Pulitzer Prize winner. You know what I mean? Like, would you have somebody, if Noam Chomsky wanted to write something, would you have hey, Noam, you're losing the plot here. To me, this is your opinion. This would be an editor's opinion that, you're off the, you're kind of off the point. Or, you're kind of, I don't really think you're getting to the meat of it. Or, I think you're kind of stretching a little bit. That would be the editor's opinion. That has nothing to do with whether he's being factual in what he's writing. So to me, this goes to the email chain that Glenn released. Because it seemed to me that the editor, again, I don't think it was anything, I really don't think it was as, I don't think it was as sinister as he maybe made it seem. I think the editor basically disagreed with Glenn's viewpoint. Not that, I don't think he truly believed Glenn was putting out anything there that wasn't factual, because if you read Glenn's piece, there's nothing in there that's not factual. He points out Biden has not answered A, B, and C. He points out, even though Biden hasn't answered these things, we also have to point out that there is no evidence as of now that Biden did anything wrong. So that was the thing. Glenn had responded to his editor being like, wait a minute, you're saying that I'm not making clear that Biden isn't, that you're saying that I haven't made clear that there is no evidence Biden did something wrong. But then Glenn responds with the actual text of him exactly saying that. So again, I think there's degrees, For example, God bless him, Marcus, who is doing some freelance reporting for us. He's doing well too. He left to work on some personal things. But, frankly, I had to have conversations with him on the phone and give him pointers for interviews. Jason Peters, who did work for us, I had to give him some pointers after the fact and say, over here, maybe push back a little more, this and that. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's for people that are kind of more Cub Scout reporters. That's for people that are kind of newer. When you reach a certain level in journalism, again, it's not to say that Glenn should never have to have his work looked at. I don't think there's anything wrong. When there's time, if I write a piece, Jen looks at my stuff and will change some things. But this whole losing the plot, well, who is the editor over Glenn Greenwald to tell him he's losing the plot? Maybe you just disagree that something is there. Maybe you, the editor, hates Trump or has a little bit more Trump derangement syndrome than Glenn has. So you think, you know what, this isn't really worth going to battle over. And I think that's really what it was. I think the Intercept did not want to risk being attacked for critically covering Biden and the Hunter Biden thing, even if there was something there, and have any attacks lobbed at them in the event that Biden lost.
Yeah, there's a couple more points that I want to bring up. One of the things that the editor accused Glenn of is saying, or I think this was Betsy, so the editor-in-chief, was saying clearly we have a lot of anti-Biden, or we have a lot of stories that don't make Biden look positive or whatever. But that's not, it's the election now. It's the general election now. So that doesn't count. Now we're up against the general election. This is a different scenario. And another thing is, Glenn, this had been building for a while, which you talked about earlier. So I want to point out that I think I might be wrong, but possibly the only Intercept person that went to bat for Glenn was Lee Fong. And so Glenn mentioned Lee. And if you guys don't follow Lee Fong, he's great. I think he's a great journalist. So on, in his resignation stuff, his announcement, Glenn mentioned Lee Fong as a journalist he respected. But he also mentioned the dust up a few months ago between Akilah Lacey and Lee Fang. And what happened was So Akilah Lacey is another Intercept journalist, and she, I believe she's mixed race, so she's Black. So Lee had gone out and done some, field reporting, and so he interviewed a Black man, and the Black man brought up Black on Black violence, and so Lee posted that unedited to his Twitter. So Akilah Lacey accused Lee right on her Twitter of being racist, and so it became this big thing among leftist journalists and among the Intercept staff, so much so that Lee was essentially forced to write a letter of being sorry, an apology letter for being racist. Lee is Asian, by the way. So it just became this huge thing. So that's one of the things that Glenn brought up, that it became this culture of having to kind of bow down to
the woke mob.
Yeah, exactly, the woke mob. That's a great term for it. So it's one of this latest incident. I think, if you look at the chain of emails where he got the email from the original editor, and then he responded again, then Betsy responded. It happened really, really fast, this resignation, but it had to have been building for a while.
And I want to give some shout outs, gotten some more donations in the GoFundMe. Thank you. Thomas, $15. Alex, $10. Terrence, $5. Kathy, $20. So we're $370 something away. $370 something away from $125,000 raised. So maybe there's a heavy hitter in there that likes real in the field reporting, that wants to help us get to 125K by the end of this. My wife just told me the pizza's almost here, so we gotta wrap soon.
We have a couple super chats. So Cesar Omar Sanchez, $14.99 in the super chat. Gracias for the informative news from the streets of the poor working class. Thank you. Detroit Microsound, $5. Editors are gatekeepers. I mean, they can be. They certainly can be, for sure. We had certain things, for example, in the Vice story that we wanted to put in, but didn't. I don't think it was purposeful censorship, but it was scared fear, I guess, on the part of them. We also got another $99.99 from a PunchCat07. Oh my gosh.
Are you sure?
Yes, look.
Wow, PunchCat. I want to kiss you. You're so great.
PunchCat.
Thank you so much,
PunchCat for president.
That's amazing. I mean, the last thing I'll say on this, to me, this is, and I've been hitting this for days and days and days since the New York Post story came out with Hunter Biden. To me, the Glenn Greenwald Intercept fracas, if you may, it's much bigger than that. And to be clear, I like Ryan Grimm. I like some of the people at the Intercept. I think they do good work. Full disclosure, I just reached out to Ryan yesterday to see if he'd be interested in something we're working on. So I'm not condemning them, burned down to the ground or anything. I think in this case, I think they're wrong. Mm-hmm. But what I will say is, Glenn had pointed this out. You have to be consistent in your vetting of stories. The Intercept, like Glenn pointed out, mindlessly just reported that the Hunter Biden thing was Russian disinformation. They put out there mindlessly that letter of 50 former CIA spooks that said this is the markings of being Russian disinformation, even though in that same letter they said they had no evidence for it. Mm-hmm. Literally, this is becoming like the Democratic Party's counter to Trump's fake news. You know how Trump reflexively, if anything's critical, fake news, not real, fake news. I mean, what is Biden doing? What is the Democratic Party doing? Any critical story, Russian disinformation. Simone Sanders is now using this talking point. Oh, you're propping up Russian disinformation. I'm not, obviously Trump, I think it's clear, as a fascist, he has used this as a method to basically create a post-truth society. Obviously Fox News and Breitbart and 4chan and all these places have helped him do it. But my point is, you can't have it one way or the other. You have to be consistent. So if the Intercept is going to be extremely rigorous about Glenn's piece on Hunter Biden and Glenn's piece on Hunter and did Joe Biden have any involvement in it, then why are you just mindlessly regurgitating total bullshit from the deep state? And there is a deep state. It's not just that. I mean, frankly, they have James Risen on their payroll, who I don't think he's corrupt, but I think he's an establishment thinker. I mean, he buys into the Russiagate to this day. And Aaron Mate had, I forget his name, but it was a great interview with a former Gary something, maybe Gary Peters. There's never been any hardcore proof that the DNC was hacked by Russia. None. The New York Times did this story on Fuzzy Bear or something Bear and, names that are Russian. Literally, we found out this year that 3 years ago in 2017, the CEO of CrowdStrike, the third party, the DNC and MSNBC christened CrowdStrike as like amazing and what they say goes. The CEO told Congress under oath, behind closed doors, we don't have conclusive evidence that Russia exfiltrated. If this were the case, why did Donna Brazile not let the FBI see the DNC servers? So the whole point is, all of these outlets, the same outlets that have said, 60 Minutes saying, well, we can't confirm the Hunter Biden story, or Christian Amanpour in Glenn's piece. Let me show it, actually, because this was total cringe. I mean, look at this from Christian Amanpour, CNN's anchor.
Other emails, there's text messages. They are real. So according to the U.S. government, the FBI has verified this.
Everybody to look at that, but that's not what we're hearing from the FBI.
Why don't you want to report this? This is one of the most powerful families in Washington, the Biden family. And you're okay? You're okay with our interests being sold out to profit? Joe Biden and his family, when we're suffering during a pandemic from communist China, he's doing shady business deals with communist China. You're comfortable, okay?
As you know perfectly well, I'm a journalist and a reporter, and I follow the facts. And there has never been any issues in terms of corruption. Now, let me ask you this. Yesterday, the FBI...
Wait. How do you know that?
I'm talking about reporting and any evidence. I'm talking to you now.
Okay, I would love if you guys would start doing that digging and start doing that verification.
No, we're not going to do your work for you. I want to ask you a question. The FBI,
it's a journalist's job. It's a journalist's job to find out if this is verified.
I want to ask you a question about the FBI press conference.
I hate to agree with a Republican hack. Wait, when Christian Amanpour, I'm not going to do your job for you? It's your fucking job to do this, Christian Amanpour. And by the way, when she keeps saying there's no evidence, you can't find evidence of anything if you do not look. The New York Post reported that Joe Biden, I believe it was in 2014 or 15, met with the Burisma executive. Joe Biden says, I never had anything to do with Hunter Biden's business dealings. New York Post has emails that seem to be them, Hunter and this guy, Tony Bobulinski, Hunter's business partner, talking about Joe Biden's role in all of this, talking about potential equity for the big guy. When Amanpour and 60 Minutes and all these places say there's no evidence, well, Joe Biden has not actually went on the record saying, I never met with this person. They haven't even, at least Hillary Clinton's campaign, it was bullshit. But right away, they were like, well, no, these are forgeries, WikiLeaks. They were trying to spin it. Biden's campaign hasn't even challenged that. So, there's no definitive evidence, but there's questions here. I'm not a right-winger saying that. There's legitimate questions, because you would think he would answer it if he never met with this person. But when you have CNN reporters saying, I'm not doing your job for you, it's your job. It's not that they're not doing, they don't want to dig into this. That's what's going on here. They don't want to dig into this. And I firmly believe, folks, I firmly believe this. And this is somebody, by the way, who voted for Biden, which many of you don't like. I don't think, regardless of whether you personally want Trump out, which I do, I don't think that if you're an actual journalist, journalism doesn't work on a calendar. Like, you don't investigate things and then pause because it's 2 weeks before the election and you don't want to be complicit in re-electing Donald Trump. That ain't how it works. Frankly, this shit should have been investigated during the primary, but the media wouldn't investigate it. So, if you ask me, if something fell on my lap that was damning against Joe Biden, and I had as close to verification as possible, should I not report it because, yeah, I'm a journalist, but Jordan, there's bigger things at work here. There's a fascist in the White House, and we need to get rid of him. No, I would have to report it because if I went to the latter, that would mean I'm not a journalist, I'm a partisan. I'm a political activist in that case. You can't just, I don't know what you think, but you can't just turn it on and off. And I would say, whether it's the Intercept or these same other outlets that seem to be so rigorous now on vetting this, and they won't even cover it, and they won't even ask Biden. Remember that CBS reporter who asked him about it and was slammed on Twitter by other journalists for even asking him about it? I don't understand.
Maggie Haberman was called MAGA Haberman.
MAGA Haberman. The bottom line is, these same outlets and these same journalists that are now refused to even look into this and vet it, they ran like wildfire with Russian bounties on U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. They ran like wildfire with this bullshit that Russia hacked the Vermontric electric grid. They ran like wildfire with, Michael Cohen was in Prague and, it was somehow involved with Russian collusion. They ran like wildfire with next to no vetting. Just single anonymous sources from, Christiane Amanpour. Well, the FBI tells us, okay, because the FBI told you something, that means it's true. This is the sickness in corporate media.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, preach. You know what I think we should do? You should show them the Discord and Lucky's pictures so they can go to the store.
Okay, so let's go to the members only Discord. Got to be a member to get in the fun. Where's the photo?
In the photo area.
Share
your pics.
Whoa, who's that? Is that me with a fedora? Hold on.
I love that you're so excited to see yourself.
Is that not the most beautiful woman you've ever seen? My
She's
beautiful
lovely.
wife. Oh, you
She's
can't see
lovely.
it. My beautiful wife with what are those called?
Sunflowers?
Yeah, sunflowers. Had a brain fart. There's my buddy canvas dancer with her dog in the Status Coup hoodie.
Cute.
Holy cow, canvas dancer. I hope you don't mind. I'm blowing up your spot. With your beautiful dog wearing the hoodie. And then we have
Lotus.
The main event.
So this is my doggy Lucky. Can you scroll
Lord.
through? I don't know if you can scroll through the pictures. Or do you have to click in each? Double click maybe?
There's Lucky.
So, as you can see, Lucky is wearing a Status Coup hoodie.
She looks ready for journalistic battle.
Show this one's my favorite because of her eyes. Oh. So your dog could also get a Status Coup hoodie if you go to statuscoup.com/store, and you could be in this Discord seeing pictures of Jordan that Jordan gets excited about when he sees himself. If you join statuscoup.com/join, $5 a month, and it helps support real reporting.
There's pictures of me in here?
You just saw one of yourself and you got excited.
Oh, that's a boomerang.
Yeah.
No.
Well, there's one of you
I got
right there.
Oh, look. Me with the sunflower seeds, picking the sunflower plants.
No, those are sunflowers. The seeds are in the middle.
No, but where's the boomerang with my fedora?
Right
That's
there.
what I love it. Woo! Gotta love the fedora. I gotta wear that more often. Yes, so get in the fun of the Discord. We are now back at 1,700 members. But hey, we need to grow our membership significantly, and I'll tell you why. Because frankly, folks, I don't know if there's ever going to be another journalistic break.
She's a Beagle Pomeranian mix. She looks like a forever Beagle puppy. She's cute.
I don't know if there's ever going to be another grace period where we could take a week off and there's not a big story going on.
We have never taken a
If
week off.
Biden wins, frankly, I think there's going to still be chaos. I think the lame duck would be chaos between Trump and Biden. And frankly, I think if Biden becomes president, I don't think there's any honeymoon for Joe Biden among the progressive left.
No.
So we definitely need you. If you've been on the fence, I hope you'll get off the fence and sign up. I just joined today, Ron said. Woohoo, Ron! Joining as a member.
Ron,
Just
yay.
joined. So
Thank you for joining, Ron.
We're now at 1,701. 1,701 members.
Ron.
So less than 300 to go to hit the 2,000 member mark.
And I have to give a shout out to Phil because I didn't look at the username before. Corn Pop, perfect. Love it.
Right. So definitely sign up if you can. Just 16 cents a day. I mean, if you don't have that, we understand. But if you got 16 cents a day, as humbly as I could say, I think you should spend it on us. I really do. And again, we will be on Election Day. We will be in Pennsylvania, where we think it could all come down to Pennsylvania. So definitely be ready for that. Jen, more super chats?
Nancy Bernard, $9.99 in the super chat. The Intercept published a very damaging smear article against Shahid Buttar before doing thorough fact checking. Not good. Detroit Micro Sound, $5 in the super chat. Hey, we have Jeff Bezos considering buying CNN. Only makes sense. Yeah, that terrifies me. The thought of Jeff Bezos having CNN and the Washington Post, like, that's horrifying.
Yes. Further, then we could glorify more gentrification or Amazon droning, selling weapons to other countries through their drones, covered by CNN. I can't wait for that day. All right. Before we go, one more reminder, we'll be in Pennsylvania on Election Day. But Jen and I believe, are going to be going live throughout the weekend. So definitely join our text list if you're not already on it to get a text message when we're live. All you got to do is text COUP to 370-370. That's COUP to 370-370. That way you'll get a text message when we're live. We're going to be doing some business planning and other things this weekend, but we'll also be live. So definitely be on the lookout for our live streams. And if you can, become a member today. Any parting words, Jen?
Just thank you to all of our viewers. You guys are what makes it all worth it. And just check us out through the weekend. I don't know if tomorrow, maybe, but definitely Sunday, and we'll let you know exactly what our election plans are. As we mentioned at the top, we know that Joe Rogan and Kyle Kulinski and Alex Jones are going to be going live on Election Day, but we're much cooler. We're not Alex Jones. We're not psychotic. Check us out. We're going to be in the field.
And Carl, message us if you're having any issues with the link. info@statuscoup.com. Thanks for the super chat. Thanks, folks. See you this weekend.
Yeah, Carl, info@statuscoup.com. I'll send you a new link.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.